Welcome to Graham Kerr's Kitchen. It's really two programs in one. This is a series that appeals to your creative side. Food that is sumptuous stuff. How could that be? This is a program about people who want to eat healthy and reduce calories. Actually, it's about food with an aromatic quality that fills the nose. Oh, sure. But it's also about keeping my arteries clean by reducing fat. But it doesn't mean a thing if the food isn't rich and colorful. Maximize the flavor. Okay, but I must have healthy food that I can cook in minutes. I must minimize the risk. So welcome to Graham Kerr's Kitchen, where we get our heads together just for you. Hey, welcome back once again. We do get our heads together for the very obvious reason is that nowadays we're counting some of the fat and some of that kind of stuff, you know, to try and make it all come together for our families, for those people that we love. And what I wanted to do was not just me and Trina and Andy and the rest of the family, but I thought it would be really neat if I could include you as well. So we sent out 10,000 of these forms, which shows, you know, how you cook and the recipes and where your family comes from and the fruit and the vegetables, all a general pattern. And this is in the new book, and there's one in there for you so that you'll be able to fill it in for your family and follow on and do the kind of thing that I'm going to do today, okay? Now, what I'm going to do today is really to engage with Virginia Bacon Peterson. Now, here's Virginia. Now, Virginia is married. Her husband's name is Peter. Actually, it isn't. His name is Robert, but there we are. She has a high cholesterol problem, and her husband has a high hypertension as well as high cholesterol problem. I mean, they need to watch their fat, you know, in major ways. Look, as far as you're concerned, loves, I want to get this dish nailed down for you. And because of that, I wanted to look about the way that you cook. And I noticed that you like, in cooking styles, northeastern stuff, where it blows, that nor'wester comes in, and snow after snow after snow. Meat in the minor key, and I was thrilled about that, to have lower amounts of meat. But you love soup. What a wonderful combination that is. You like rice dishes, but you're not very interested in lots of grains. And I wanted to introduce you to another grain, barley. Thyme, bay leaves, well, those go beautifully in soup, obviously. Beef is a strong one for you, so I wanted to keep it as beef. Turnips you love so much that you actually pulled turnips out of this dish when you tested it and served it as an appetizer. I mean, I've never heard anybody do that before, but it's a wonderful idea. Tomato paste is another one of the things that you love. Okay, come along, I'll show you a springboarding idea to get this thing started. Good. Well, now, the whole thing that we're trying to do here is to look at, and I'll unveil them just in one moment there. This is a whole bunch of meat that you'll never see here normally. And I want to make one point. The larger the portion, the more the fat there is, the more the calories there are, the more difficult it is to get your whole plate into a 30% of calories from fat. And I'm going to start really high, and it's so high that you may think, oh, come on, Graham, listen. When I was 23 in Omaha, Nebraska, I ate a 32-ounce steak. And I ate it just like that one so that I could get the plank underneath it. And I think I'm still wearing the plank at the present moment, actually. I'm still working it off. This one is over 1,400. It's 1,465 calories, that whole one. And you know what? It has 66 grams of fat in it. And that's enough for one good chap like me, you know, for a whole day. Right. Now, let's go down in size and take this as one portion. This is a 1 pound portion of prime rib, and that's really the strip sirloin. And this used to be called an Adam cut, by the way, in those days. 645 and 18 grams of fat. Now, step down to the Eve cut and introduce you to a filet mignon. And you'd never get away with calling it Adam and Eve nowadays. But anyway, here's an Eve cut, and this one is a tenderloin of beef, 357, and 16 grams of fat. Now, come back to this. Now we're into blade. This is not so much, you know, one of those things that we say is a steak, but this one is used to chop up and put into a casserole. Now this one, for the same amount of meat per head, that's 2 pounds in the recipe, 8 ounces per head, is 377 calories and 23 grams of fat. See how marbled it is. Look over this one here. Now this one is top round. This is for 4-ounce servings, 204 calories, and 6 grams of fat. See how little fat there is marking in there. Now you get to the pork tenderloin. This one is really down. I would use this in 2-ounce servings. You see, just 2-ounce servings as I cut through like that. And that one, 93 calories per serving and 3 grams of fat. Now, really, boy, I'll tell you, when you start looking at this overall, and this is all I want you to know, the smaller the amount of meat and the less fatty the tissue in the meat, the better it's going to be from you from a point of view of being able to get meat into your food and to have that feeling of meat which you like so much, yet you don't have to do it to the levels that we used to do it in the past. Everything is coming down to a much more sensible level. Okay, so let's see how we can get a very small amount of meat and a speciality cut into this next dish. Here we go. Let's see what's on the menu.
Today on Graham Kerr's Kitchen, oxtail and barley soup, shiitake mushrooms and beef oxtail in a vegetable-seasoned red wine and barley soup.
Okay, Virginia, let's get cracking because this is soupy. I mean, I've actually got a new phrase, soupy groupies. Are you into that one? Okay, but when you're going off to make a soup, there's no finer soup in the whole world, as far as I'm concerned, but an oxtail soup. Oxtails look wonderful if you go into the, a good market and say, I want a good, fresh oxtail. And they'll cut it for you. They'll cut it in sections like this. And if you've never tasted it, it's very hard for me to see. It wafts out of my youth. I remember they used to have a couple of waifs, with a kind of cockney, like that, with a short hat on. And they're going, oh, Bisto, which is a product in England. And there's this sort of aroma trail coming through the air. Well, that's the kind of way that I feel about oxtail. Sorry to wax enthusiastic, but there it is. Now, one of the things that you need to do when you're doing this is to have some boiling water on the go, really hot boiling water, and then you just dunk the oxtail down into the boiling water. It blanches it. Bring it up to the boil just for a couple of minutes, and then just take it out and put it onto the top. Now, why? You see the difference in here between that red color and that really white color? Well, this is what I call sensitivity time. It probably would go the same if you were cooking brains or sweetbreads, and don't reel back on your couch. Come on, this is good food and wonderful food. Because, first blanch your oxtail. I mean, just think about how it feels. Doesn't it feel better that you bring it to the boil? I don't think that's really necessary with modern mechanisms of keeping things nice and hygienic, but there we go. Underneath the broiler, okay, and you broil it there for about 8 or 9 minutes, or 10, or even 12. You don't want to go too long. A really interesting thing happens during that time. Since oxtail is so fatty, it's 54% of its calories come from fat, right? 54%, that's a lot. And, to every 2 ounces of oxtail, every 2-ounce piece of the meat itself, you've got 8 grams of fat in that. And when you compare that to something like, a shank would have about 3 grams of fat in it for the same amount of meat. Now, you might see oozing down the tray in the bottom here. I hope you can. There's a lot of fat there. In fact, probably, just sizing it up, about 2 tablespoons full of fat is collected into the pan. But also it's gone really nice and brown. So you've got the Maillard reaction. You've got the essential smell of this wonderful meat coming up off the pan now. So you've got more than just the draining of the fat, but you've got the browning of it too. Okay, I'm going to let that just drain off some of the fat there for a moment. And get the basic stuff for this. I want you to really look, and I want you to admire these vegetables here. This is celery, and the reason I want you to admire it is because, really, it's never going to be eaten. And it sounds a little odd, doesn't it? That thing sounds a little odd. It sounds a bit odd that it's never going to be eaten, but I just want it for what it will give me in terms of true, delicious flavor. Look, onions, that's right. I knew if I looked at a carrot and called it an onion, you get the general idea, and I would remember. it's always out of sight, out of mind, but the onion is in the fridge, and it's there because I don't see any point for a grown-up man standing on television and crying. There is, in some of these onions nowadays, an amazing amount of ability to be able to generate oil that comes up. And it fractures the oils, and it comes up into your eyes, and it is miserable, especially if you're shorter, you know, and you're closer to it. Well, the reason I mentioned all of that is that all of that put together and made as a base, I'm going to put 3 cloves of garlic in it in a moment. But that's going to give me an essence, a wonderful aroma to the soup. And this, look, forget oxtail for a moment. Just take oxtail and move it aside and just think about this just for 1 second. You could do this with turkey or chicken or anything. Just let your mind experiment as I'm going along. This basic concept is going to make the greatest soup for you if you follow it. Okay, right, good. Now, a little bit of oil to break out the natural oils. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's flavor oils, which are different kinds of things, out of the onion. And so we're going to put the onion in the top. That's a nice large onion, nice large carrot, 2 stalks of celery, and pop all those into the top. Now, I use just a little bit in that oil flask there, which, by the way, 1 squeeze is a 1/4 teaspoonful. I find that's really helpful to be able to get a grip of, you know, the amount of oil that I'm using. So I just 4 of those in there, 1 teaspoonful. And what I use olive oil, and with just a touch of toasted sesame seed oil, which you can find in the Asian department of a good supermarket. And I don't know whether that's strictly for the dish or me, because I used to use clarified butter a lot, and that, whenever I put it in, I don't really remember in the old days, I would wax enthusiastic. My, the butter's in the pan, and all is right with the world. And then I started adding very little drops of oil, and, you know, kind of, nothing was going on. And then touch of sesame oil to that. And I could dangle myself over the dish like this and start to live again. It was just wonderful. And I find it's just got a little bit of a signature lilt to the thing. 1/16 part to 15, so, you know, 1 ounce to 15 ounces of olive oil, and that really enough. Okay. The blanching water, by the way, we can get that off the stove and throw that out, because there's no point in keeping that. Clean the pot. And it gives me an opportunity of being able to get something else back on. Good. All right. Well, now that's stirring in there nicely. To that, and because this is a dark soup, and most soups, I think, benefit through being darker in color. Do you like, you know, a dark, rich soup? Well, I've got a tomato paste here, and I'm going to put 3 tablespoons full of tomato paste in it. Now, tomato paste, look for the new label, which says no salt added. All right? And by the way, on the back, and I really applaud them for this, they've got the whole nutrition facts label on the back, and it's not everybody who's doing that for such a tiny tin. But you read all about it and you'll understand it. Now, by putting the tomato paste in, stirring it into the bottom, you are then able to get a darker color, but also a fragrance. Now, please allow some television poetic license here. I will now say to you, cook this for about 5 minutes. Keep watching it, stir it round, and the tomato, which is vivid at the moment, will go darker and darker. It's called a Maillard reaction. It's caramelizing the tomatoes and the proteins that are in it. So when it's got down to there, the flavors will be so increased, and the color will be so deepened, and you'll really understand why it's being done. Now, this is a no salt added. Again, for those people, hey, about 1 in 4 of everybody in the nation is hypersensitive, hypertensive. I'm sure we're all hypertensive. Hypertensive, high blood pressure. And so this is being done for people like that. I don't know whether you are or whether you aren't, but hey, let's keep the salt down if we possibly can. So stirred in around like that. Now, a little bit of herb in there, and you noticed at the beginning that Virginia likes thyme. And so we're going to put some thyme in, a good hank of thyme, about 4 or 5 pieces of fresh thyme, or about ½ a teaspoonful of dried, and a good bunch of parsley there, and a couple of bay leaves, all right? And then here, just a ½ teaspoonful of black peppercorn. Well, it won't make it hot, but it has a kind of smoky, pleasant taste to the whole thing. It's a sort of background flavor, and it's just wonderful. Good, stirring that all about. Now, you've got the basic stock ready. All you need now is 1 cup of red wine. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. This is a Cabernet Sauvignon, and it is without alcohol, and I've waxed eloquent about that enough, I think. So if you want to do it that way, you know, it's always, the choice is yours. Wine with alcohol or without, that's yours. Now, take the broiled pieces of oxtail that we had before. You'll find that there's plenty of space for that, or, you know, turkey or pork or whatever it is that you want to cook and make a decent soup out of in the minor key. That's bones and all. I'm only going to get, that's 2 pounds, you see, but I'm only going to get 8 ounces of meat out of that altogether. Right, put the lid on, and then after 2 hours of cooking, it's going to look like it is here. And I'll dive into that and show you that in just a moment. Big thing at the present moment is, however, at about that stage, something really changes. And that is that you're going to have to take the vegetables, which I said are going to have to go away, because they're going to be tired out. After 2 hours, they're kind of limp and listless, you know, lying around bunches of cellulose. So I thought I'd show it to you this way. I've got some pearl barley here. Now, barley are like tiny little sponges, and they soak it up. Now, come over here, have a look at this. All of this fat that is on here is just lying around on the surface. These little sponges would soak up the fat if I put them in there, wouldn't they? So that I simply don't want to do. So I'm going to cook the barley separately. 6 cups of water, half a cup of barley, put it in there, and cook that 15 minutes, okay? Just time passes. Like that. And then here, 2 diced, beautifully diced, by the way, carrots, beautifully diced turnip. So those 2 vegetables are just put into the top, and they're cooked for another 15 minutes. Okay, so that's half an hour. Now they're ready to meet their maker. They are simmered together, and they're going to look just like these. That's where I put those on, you know, as we shifted the other thing over. Now, these are then drained off to the side, and you're going to keep some of the water underneath because it's good vegetables and everything is perfectly cooked. This is the pan in which we're going to assemble all of this, but let me show you first of all, if I could grab a hold of that. That's a little hot. Let's get this and place and strain this now into there, just all at once. Just push it through. Whoops. And you've got the oxtail in the bottom, and you've got all of the rest of the vegetables, you know, just draining out underneath. Oh, and the aroma is just staggering. Now, everything is really hot now. What you do is, by the way, these people that designed this jug designed it to embarrass people on television, I'm sure. Whoa, there we go. Please, come on, put a decent lip on the outside, just for fun. All right. Now, you see what you've got? You've got that fat strainer now with a fat which has risen to the top, with a fat that was in here as well. All of that is reducing the fat content down tremendously. You get just a little bit which comes from there, but whoa. Now, that is somewhat hot pan. I wanted to make sure that that was hot, and it is. You just pour that down in there now. And it is an irritating thing. You simply can't rush it. It just has to keep on pouring its little self out. And you simply pour it right down to the bottom until you get to the amount of fat which is on the bottom there. Now, when you get to the fat, you stop. Then you can take those hot vegetables there and just cascade them in. Now, that barley is perfect. Over here, I stripped the meat off the outside of these pieces of oxtail here. Comes off awfully easily. And any fat that you see around that has to be stripped off as well. And then to sort of anoint the thing on the top with the most incredible idea. I'll show you what this is in a second. You simply pop in 4 ounces of shiitake mushrooms. Now, shiitake mushrooms are this thing here. They're now being manufactured you know, sort of produced. They don't sort of grow wild. And these are cut into little tiny squares like that so as to approximate the same kind of meaty texture as the oxtail that you've got. All right, so that's stirred all in around, completely done, and there is your soup. Adjust the seasoning, put a little pepper and salt in it if you like, and then a good, nicely formed soup bowl like this, and look at it. Just pour it in. By the way, if you need a little bit more liquid, drain a little from the skimming of the vegetables and the barley. It's just teeming with nourishment and tastes wonderful. Okay, so there it is. A good dollop of the soup with a nice bit of parsley on the top. Ha! Come through. The smell is just terrific. Oh, the aroma of this will fill the neighborhood, not the nose, the neighborhood. All right. The classic one is, has little fat globules on the top. There's nothing that is seen here. The shiitake mushrooms are cooking off just beautifully in that very hot liquid in a hot bowl. Now, the classic is $2.91, and this one, lo and behold, is $3.54. This is why I don't believe it. Certainly not 12 grams of fat or 4 of saturated. I don't believe it's 31% calories from fat. I do believe 45 cholesterol, perhaps. 195 sodium, certainly, very good, and 40 carbohydrate. But I don't believe that fat content. So on your behalf, I'm going to go into that. I'm going to challenge the computer. I'm fed up with computers telling me what to do. Aren't you? Really? Well, in a way, you know, I'm married. That's enough. So what I just wanted. Oh, warming and delicious. Virginia, you said that you didn't know why about the shiitake until you actually tasted it, and nothing stood out. It is a beautiful soup, it really is. It's just a question of taking the things that you love to eat and putting them together with a little less meat, for example. That's the springboarding this time. Use a little less meat and use the food that you love to fill up the plate in a special way. That's what you call springboarding. Do give it a go. Now, Virginia said a very interesting thing. She said, you know, this really took quite a long time to make. And I understand that, Virginia. But look, how about this? This whole concept of this extra meal is just to simply take twice the amount, twice the volume of the soup, and then let a second part of it cook down a bit. Put it in the freezer, bring it out, and it's going to look like this, you know, when you've done it. But all the work has been done. You've already got ahead of it. Now, what I'd like to do is something which is done in Britain quite a lot. It's called cottage pie. And just take some potato, and I suppose that in Britain it would be almost sacrilege to suggest that you would do this with any other kind of potato than the real McCoy. But, you know, it is possible to make a potato out of those potato flakes. It's possible. It really can be done. Just spread it all over the top like this. You know, take a little bit of time. It takes 2 or 3 minutes to do it properly. And push it all out to the outside. Oh, well. There, pretty good. And then take a fork and just run the fork across the top. Now, some people say that it's called a cottage pie because it looks like one of those thatched cottages in England. Huh? How they go. Just move it out to the edge, seal it in so that, or that's particularly badly done, but I know that you'll bear with me. Good, right, fine. There's a ways of ploughing fields, by the way. You go up, down there, round there, and then up through the center. I was reading about it the other day. Good. And then a little 2% milk, and just brush that on the top. I use buttermilk in the whipped potatoes, and it's an amazing thing when you use just a dash of buttermilk, how nice it makes that. And just pop that into the oven, and guess what? You put that into the oven for the normal amount of time that we do, about 20 minutes, just to warm up at about 350 degrees. And what you'll have is a slightly brown surface because of that 2% milk. And it looked like this. Does that look nice? You know, it almost looks like that thatched cottage idea, doesn't it? And then a spoon, and you simply, there are 6 portions here, so that is certainly all of that portion. Look, just lift it up out of there. Oh, and onto the top. And look how brown and glistening that is underneath there. Just serve some of that. How about some peas on the side? And virtually all the work that you have to do with that has been done. Try it. God bless. The great thing about a soup like this is that it sticks your lips together. Just perfect. Virginia, thank you for liking it. And hey, hope the neighbors enjoy it still, including the aroma. Now for the washing up.